We're going to dive deep into the topic of in-season wrestling nutrition, and we're going to start right now. What's up, everybody? It's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com, and if this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in becoming a better athlete, you want to be more explosive, you want to be more athletic, you want to run faster, you want to get stronger, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you ring that notification bell so we can help you become a champion. So we've all heard those horror stories about wrestlers just cutting tons and tons of weight, just crawling to the scale, throwing up everywhere, barely able to step on the scale and actually make weight. We've heard about high school coaches, high school parents forcing their kids to run around in latex, to run around in their suits and cut a ton of weight, and then berate them and yell at them for their poor performance on the mat and tell them they need to cut even further. We've heard coaches try to theorize and try and come up with, well, if you cut these two weight classes, imagine what it'll be like if you cut from 170 down to 152. You'll be like a 170-pounder wrestling at 152, acting as though there's no decrease or diminishment in performance. And a lot of this stuff is still rooted in the 1960s and the 1970s in ancient, archaic theories, in ancient and archaic principles, and not recognizing science and not recognizing where we've gone with nutrition practices over the last 15 to 20 years. And so our entire goal is to help all of those wrestlers out there, to help parents, to help coaches understand what they need to do during this season of wrestling in regards to nutrition. And we're going to start with that fifth key principle right now to help you with your in-season wrestling nutrition. So before we get into our top 5 list right here, we've got to think about, what do wrestlers need, right? What do they actually need when they're executing, when they're competing in the sport of wrestling? And so if we can think about, they need to be fully hydrated. We know that wrestlers that are fully hydrated can react faster. They're gonna have a little bit more energy. Their muscles are gonna fire a bit faster. Their muscles are gonna utilize ATP a lot more effectively. If we're dehydrated, we're gonna feel sluggish. Our mental game won't be as strong, so we're not gonna be able to react as quickly as possible. So in the sport of wrestling, when you're competing, you need to make sure you're fully hydrated. You also need to make sure that your muscles are saturated with glucose. We know that glucose is the key to creating ATP, and that helps during high intensity training. That helps in high intensity activities, and that's exactly what wrestling is. We also know that we need to be strong. We need wrestlers to have very good relative strength. Wrestlers need to have very good absolute strength if they're up in the heavier weight classes. They need to have good strength endurance, and all of these things are important from a training perspective. But if you have a wrestler that is malnourished, that's not getting enough micronutrients, they're not getting enough macronutrients, they feel sluggish, they don't have any energy, then all of these key elements just go by the wayside, and that's where we can start to see that diminishment in their performance. It's important to recognize that the key behind sports performance is proper nutrition for recovery, and wrestling is one of the most grueling sports on the planet. So to recover effectively, you have to be eating optimally for your specified weight class. And that's going to take us into that number 5 principle right here. And this is something very, very simple, is know your thermic effect of food. So what does that mean? If we can think about thermic effect of food, if you think about burning a fire at your house, you go outside and you have a fireplace, you will start a fire. If we get a very, very large log and it's wet, it just got cut, to pull the energy out of that log, you're gonna need to spend a lot of energy to get that energy out. If you can think about the energy that you would need if you've got a couple different pieces of kindling and some leaves, you might only need a match to start that fire and to get that energy out. It's a lot less energy to pull that energy out. Now, if we think about if we have a larger log and it's been dried out for 2 years, you're going to need less energy to pull that energy out. So now, if we can think about thermic effect of food, That's where protein comes into play. That's where fiber comes into play. We start to see that if we eat more protein, if we have a higher protein diet, let's say 30% of our daily intake in calories comes from protein, for every gram of protein, we're gonna use, out of those 4 calories, we're gonna use about 25% of those 4 calories. So you're gonna use a calorie just to get those other 3 calories out of that protein. So it's important to start to understand that, because in the sport of wrestling, you might have to count calories and be very, very, very precise with where you're going with your nutrition. Same with fiber. You start to see the thermic effect of food, and you can utilize that to play in your favor. So now that you can see that fat, the thermic effect of fat is only about 2 to 3%. So out of those 9 calories, you're only gonna burn about 1 calorie to get the other 8 out. Whereas with protein, you're gonna burn a lot more to get 8 calories out. So it's a lot more effective when you're starting to comprehend the thermic effect of food and know that foods like protein and foods that are a little bit higher in fiber have a much higher thermic effect, and that can help you in your weight cut. That 4th key for your in-season wrestling nutrition is to refeed effectively. So let's play this hypothetical game. Let's say that you've got a dual meet on a Tuesday and you've got a tournament on Saturday. Let's say you have a decent cut. You got to cut like 5-6 pounds. Nothing crazy, but it's a decent cut. What we can do is we can really start to understand that refeeds can actually raise our basal metabolic rate. So if I'm used to eating 2,000 calories, and for one day I eat 2,400 calories, so 2,400 calories, my basal metabolic rate will rise because our bodies like to be in homeostasis. Our bodies are constantly adapting to remain in homeostasis. So for that day, we can trigger a little bit of a rise in our basal metabolic rate. Now, the key here is the next couple days, if we cut our calories from 2,400 on that refeed day down to 1,800 or down to 1,700, we'll see a really positive aspect in our weight drop, and we're still eating and nourishing our body. So if we've got a dual meet on a Tuesday, we might sit here and let's say Monday, you've got to cut 5 pounds, you're 5 pounds over. Maybe you cut carbs on that Monday. That helps get rid of some water weight. You weigh in Tuesday, knowing that you have planned to refeed effectively. So you refeed before the dual meet. You follow a nice plan before that dual meet. After the dual meet, you eat a large meal and you get those calories really high for that day on Tuesday. And now you can go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you can diminish your calories down to 1,800 or 2,000. And then throughout those next 3 days before you head to the tournament, now your body's BMR, your basal metabolic rate, is a little bit higher from that refeed. And now you're also gonna feel better, and you can roll into Saturday, and then Saturday happens, and throughout the day, you can, again, because you're at a tournament, you can eat quite a bit more to try and refeed effectively and raise that basal metabolic rate so that you can in turn come back around to Tuesday and have an effective cut. So learn how to utilize refeeds effectively. That number 3 aspect here is that we've got to cut carbs as a last resort. And I recommend don't cut your carbs. But a lot of coaches are incessant. They want to cut kids really, really hard. And in some cases, you're almost forced to cut those carbs a little bit. Think about cutting carbs as that last day of cutting. That's going to help you get rid of some water weight. It's going to help you lose that water weight, which it might give you that extra pound or pound and a half for weigh-ins, and you're going to make that weight. But then be sure post weigh-ins that you have a really good plan in place to replenish your glycogen storage. We don't want to cut carbs before that last day because it can impede our performance in the practice room. And if we impede our performance in the practice room, we're not going to become better wrestlers. So that's the key here, is that wait till the last second to cut your carbs, but know that when you're cutting your carbs, your energy levels are going to drop quite a bit and you might not feel as powerful. Again, be sure that if you do cut your carbs, you have a proper post weigh-in recovery resource that you can utilize to make sure that you're eating well and that you feel better when you get out onto that competition stage. That number 2 key aspect is count your calories. And I know a lot of people are out there grumbling, like, oh, it's so hard, it's so difficult. But just count them. You don't even have to be super, super precise. But if you're consistently counting your calories, you can start to understand what you need to take in throughout the week so that you recover really well, and what you need to cut so that you can actually start to see a diminishment in your weight if you have to make a specified weight class. It's extremely, extremely valuable to count your calories, because then you can start to see where you're getting those specific macros. You can start to understand your thermic effect of food. You can see that you're getting a little bit more fiber, you're getting a little bit more protein, you're actually feeling good, and you're actually wrestling really well because you're counting calories, because you're spending a little bit more time in putting a little bit more effort into your craft. And that's a challenge that I'm gonna make to all the wrestlers and the wrestling coaches out there. We all talk about being state champions and NCAA All-Americans and NCAA champions, and then going to a world team and going to the Olympics and doing all these crazy things, doing amazing things. And we all will take those extra reps in the wrestling room. We'll take those shots. We'll work on our technique. But we won't do something that can have a seriously impressive, dramatic impact on your performance. We'll sit there and ignore tracking our calories, and instead we'll have our wrestlers cut down and starve themselves and then expect them to actually perform well. But if you want to be a champion, and if you want to be a state champion, you want to be an NCAA All-American, and you want to be an NCAA champion, you need to make this step. You need to start counting your calories and understand the impact that nutrition has on your overall performance. Now, before we get into that final key factor, I understand there's a lot of different aspects that go into nutrition. There's a lot of different aspects that go into wrestling, and that's exactly why we put together our in-season wrestling nutrition program. And we even have a resource, you can click on the link down below, that gives you a precise post-weigh-in plan to help you prepare for that big match and eat properly before you step out onto the mat to dominate your opponent. Now, that final key factor is you need to meal prep. Again, I can hear the grumblings, oh, this is gonna be so hard. But one of the keys behind wrestling is nutrition and recovery. Nutrition sparks recovery from every training session. Every rep that you're taking with that high crotch, every rep that you're taking with a cradle, every rep that you're taking when you're heavy on the head, it will get stronger if you meal prep, if you take nutrition seriously. And that's the whole goal here, is that when you prepare your meals, let's say it's a Sunday with your family, you can sit there and because you counted your calories and you refed yourself properly, and you're actually in a good state of mind, and you understand that thermic effect of food, you probably won't have to cut your carbs because you're meal prepping and you're counting your calories. Okay, so if you meal prep on a Sunday and you lay out all your meals throughout the entire week, and how much protein you're gonna have each and every day, how many carbs and how much fat you're gonna have each and every day, now you're not gonna binge eat. You're not gonna come home and sneak in those Oreos, because you know exactly what you have to eat at every single meal. I've seen wrestlers cut really, really well, and then all of a sudden they stop tracking their calories, they stop meal prepping, and now they turn into zombies because they're gorging themselves on junk food. And then after they gorge themselves on junk food, they have to starve themselves because they fall off the wagon. So if you don't want to be that person, if you want to be the champion wrestler, you need to prepare your meals ahead of time. At the beginning of the week, lay out those practices that are going to be harder. Now you can look at it and say, hey, Monday, Wednesday, those are the harder practices. I need to eat a little bit more. Hey, Tuesday, that's when we're gonna refeed. Saturday, that's when we're gonna refeed. So now you have more food that you can prepare on those specific days. Hey, Thursday, Friday, all right, now we got our meals prepped so that we can start to cut that weight a little bit more. And you're more prepared. This is just like football. You're preparing for each and every step ahead of time. You're taking care of all those different facets that go into being a champion. So if you want to be a champion wrestler, make sure that you know the thermic effect of your food. Make sure that you understand the impact that refeeds can have on you. Don't cut your carbs unless it has to be a last resort. Know that tracking your macronutrients and counting calories can dramatically improve your performance. And at the end of the day, you have to meal prep for those days moving forward to help with your overall performance. So if you want more information about wrestling-based training and you want help with your wrestling nutrition and training, you can head over to garagestrength.com and you can pick up our wrestling-based programs. If you want more content about wrestling training, click on this video right here. Until next time, guys, peace.